Hey guys, today's episode of Hammering It Out is essentially going to be a look into the 72-hour TF2 jam I took part in 2017 February. Yeah, February. Essentially, this is going to be looking at how I went from nothing to a map that could be played. So we start out with a simple sketch. This was done in one of my little notebooks I take with me everywhere. I simply draw it out after some ideas from some coworkers. And then, as soon as I got home and was able to, I got to mapping it out, kind of blocking out different bits, trying to get down the general play. One of the big things was I had a coworker who came up to me when I mentioned that I wanted to do this, and she informed me that she wanted to know what the best bits of this map were going to be. And that kind of got me thinking about the best bits of all my maps that I've never released, or the best bits of the maps that I've been working on for years and years. And a lot of them were the smaller maps. It was always the area around the point was always the best. The parts farther out were usually the worst, and usually the part people didn't like. So I thought maybe I'll go with a heavily detailed, smaller based, capture the hill point situation, and we'll maybe do a unique type of design. Maybe we'll do something that we haven't done before. And that's when my mind kind of stumbled across something that I had seen quite a bit in recent history: a rail ferry, or rail barges. It's a weird thing that I stumbled across when I've been looking at old photos on Facebook. I have a few groups that I watch, and it kind of inspired me to go with a 1950s kind of vibe for that. And with that came with this interesting idea of, okay, for doing that, that means this is going to be a dock, meaning one side of the level is going to be able to just become a death trap for anyone with a tartan charge, or with any type of pyro weaponry. Essentially, that's going to become their hit spot. But everyone else needs a bit of a ability to shine in their own section. As you can see here when we're playing through, you're kind of getting an idea of what it looks like inside the level itself, a bit of the running and jumping areas, a bit of a highlight spot for the scout, a highlight spot for classes that can jump far, other classes that can't get that far. I kind of wanted to give everyone their own little place where they could play. The giant crates on the rail cars was actually a way to give elevation to the area, so that soldiers could get up there and kind of shoot down the enemy and give it a bit more elevation. One of the few things that I've always had issue with is elevation in my maps. The maps where I had the best elevation were usually, once again, close to the points. That was one of the things I definitely wanted to carry over here and wanted to kind of play around with. As you can see here, I'm kind of taking some of the different objects from out in the map and trying to bring them over into the barge, trying to get the water set up a bit, trying to get the map blocked out. And this was all over a period of 72 hours. 72 hours where I wasn't just doing this. Part of my life is I have a job, and I had to spend a good 6 to 7 hours for 2 of these days going to my job, doing my job, and then coming home and then being able to work. And that took a lot. That took a lot of work. Considering what time I tend to work during like daytime hours at my job, so that means I had to work this essentially at the night shift, anytime between 6 p.m. and midnight or 1 a.m. was usually what I was using to work on this map to kind of get it hashed out into a good place. Even here, you're watching me slowly build up what would become later on the warehouses, or that's what I'm calling them. I'm not entirely sure if that's what they're going to be. The level itself is not finished. I only got it a certain ways in before the timer ran out. But considering what I got done in the amount of time with how much else I had to do outside of this, I'm quite pleased with what I ended up with. what you're seeing right now is actually very curious, because this day was the end of day one, beginning of day two, and that's kind of when I would end up going to work, and I had a bunch of ideas that I kind of ended up jotting down, and I ended up making up a new little plan based off of what I already knew, and that's where this comes in. So essentially, I went back to the drawing board, took what I already knew, kind of laid it out a bit more, and from there we get a different type of level and a bit of a more refined and easy to work with idea. So now we gotta take that, bring it back into the level designer, get it hashed out, and start playtesting. Because at this point, I was down to 30 some hours. Yeah, wasn't nervous at all. Not at all. Uh, this was probably the most exciting and thrilling adventure I'd had in a while when making maps. Normally, it's a very long, tedious project where I listen to a ton of podcasts and I just zone out. But this was one where I actively was trying to stay in the zone while working as fast as possible to get as much done. So anytime I would hit a roadblock, I could feel the time ticking away. And once or twice, I would hit a roadblock and I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And essentially, I just had to step back and figure out what to do. There's even a point that was closer toward the middle, the end of day 2, beginning of day 3, where I actually had to take I believe it was a 2 to 3 hour break. I sat down and I said, I don't know what to make here. I need to go recharge my juices and figure out what I'm going to do to make this fun. So, my way of recharging the juices and figuring out what to do is I went and played Assassin's Creed Syndicate. The reason for that, though, is actually kind of... I definitely want to handshake my old self because I thought I realized now it's a really good idea, because Assassin's Creed Syndicate has a ton of like dock-like areas. Most of the middle of the town in that game is dock area, and that could have been boring, but it's one of the most interesting and awesomely kind of interactive and always moving areas. So I kind of took a bit of from that, and I figured out this kind of that I needed to make a crane, or I needed to do something that helped the middle of the map move a bit more, helped it gain a little bit more flavor. I think what I ended up with works a little bit better than what I had been thinking, and it definitely helped me figure out some new cover areas, because one of my big fights that I was having right now when I was working on this is simply cover and sightlines and trying to figure that out. Also, yes, you're going to be getting peeks at other maps I've been working on for years and years and years. And maybe I'll actually do full-on episodes and go back and talk about them and talk about the design mistakes I'm applying to them. Maybe. We'll see. But, anyway. Right now, the main point of this level here has been simply, we want condensed, we want tightly packed, and we want something where the gamers are going to have a lot of fun, going back and forth, fighting, and kind of getting a good little rhythm going. Right now, it looks pretty weird on the screen, I realize. I was actually looking through reference photos in another tab, and that's why I definitely had a good idea here. Essentially, it was trying to create mooring masts and mooring areas where you get to tie up boats and barges, and it was a really good idea for this area because this is supposed to be a dock. But The issue is the ones that I had found in the, I think it's a Bullet Crops pack, just giant. They were absolutely humongous and just didn't fit well with what I wanted. Here we are doing another play test. This time I think I actually went ahead and rendered out I went ahead and rendered out a walkable area and kind of made it so that I could actually start testing with bots. So, put in some bots, kind of tried to figure out what the heck was going on with my screen, and, well, simply played along and seen what worked, what didn't work, where people were getting hung up, the sight lines, who was getting shot where, who got killed where, and also kind of got a decent idea for how the game was balanced, how the level was balanced. Was one side being favored more than the other? Was there an unnecessary sight line somewhere that I didn't think of? Were the snipers able to shoot something I didn't think of? Will one team keep another team from all being able to push forward? It was simply trying to figure out if there was something that just wasn't working. And I'm actually really happy to say that these tests gave me a lot of insight into how players would be playing. I will say there was a few things that were missing that I think normal players would be doing a lot of. There would be a ton of rocket jumping up onto the top of those crates. There'd be a ton of people going out into the barges. But also the issue is I also don't think a lot of people go out into these barges because they're just the risk reward is not there for them. So that's why you might see them change. It's kind of curious to see my gameplay sped up like this. So I know I said it in another take, but I'm not sure if I said it here. All the gameplay footage is actually sped up to 1000%, while all the level design footage is sped up to 2000%. So really do suggest if you want to kind of figure out the timing and how long this all took me to work out, go ahead. Take the times of how long the sections are, down it by those percentages. I'm pretty sure get a very decent or very close to estimate for how much I've worked on this. There was a bit of time without this where I was working on in other ways, but that's a pretty good way to figure out what I was doing. So now this was kind of taking my ideas from Assassin's Creed Syndicate and also a few ideas I'd had while at work and kind of applying them. Taking the idea of, instead of having giant crates there, why not have some small crates and maybe something else? Kind of changing up the area a bit. I think in the end this does work out much better. Having that truckload with the trailer and then having a few blocks over there that kind of give cover and protection to the area not only gives it a bit of motion in a way, it kind of gives the area a feel of, oh, this has use. This has a story to it. This is where the trucks come out. This is where the trucks go in. And kind of helped a story that I kind of wanted to play around with. Because one of the things about Team Fortress 2 is it's a lot of this red team versus this blue team. But the teams kind of have their own backgrounds. Red is a demolition. Blue tends to be builders. And because of that, they also tend to have blue is more futuristic, while red is a bit more rustic. Then you have the whole spy and high-tech aspect as well, and I kind of want to play with that a little bit in this level, as well as giving the whole blue and red and demolition versus construction. Overall, this entire little level here, it's kind of me playing around more with the art style of the two different teams and also playing around a bit with the storytelling in the level. It also, I won't lie, was kind of nice to be able to play around with an asynchronous map. a map that is not symmetrical. It's sort of symmetrical, but it's not. Instead of having it be like exactly the same, one side is technically a little bit more to the left than the other, kind of making more like a slope along the cliff. And on one hand, that does make it a bit uneven. On the other, the way I've built up the level, it's kind of, according to the way I've played with bots, made it a very even playing field. Each side has their own abilities, their own positives and downsides. There's also some ideas I've had regarding background things that I would wish to do now that the competition is over. I might upload it again as like a separate thing. I'm not entirely sure if I can, or if now I'm stuck leaving it the way it is on TF2 maps. But if I do re-upload it, I am very curious to try some new things. I will say one of my favorite parts about this was actually being able to use a variation of like the construction assets, the frontline assets, and even a bit of the swamp and bullet props. Bullet crop props. That's a hard one to say. Along this map. And it kind of was a fun kind of experience to go, okay, here's these very certain styles. Let's combine it on the one and make essentially a 1950s marina. Overall, it really kind of works, and it's kind of nice to see. Even right now, what you're seeing is simply just putting up the walls and kind of burying off each of the sections. Something definitely needed when doing playtests like I am. Tried to have like a rock ground there that just didn't work. Played around with crate location. Tried opening up that crate. Tried putting in crates in there inside the crate. The container. It was definitely a lot of playing around trying to figure out, would this work? Would this work? Would that work? Would this work? Does this look good? Does that look good? I definitely feel like I've got a much more satisfying idea of what I need to do here now. And overall, I feel like this level is much more a better quality product than what I've sometimes put out in the past. I do love Payload Alpine. I believe it's called Alpine Forest. It was actually a submission that I made to TF2 Maps for a dynamic mapping contest they had all the way back in, what year was it? 2015. My goodness, that was a long time ago. Was absolutely an amazing time during that as well, but no, oh wow, I forgot about that. No, the map was actually made back in 2012. Wow, I updated it in 2015. I forgot I'd updated it. That is insane. Ah. And here you can see me playing around a bit more with the level, trying to have bots play through it, figure out a bit more of what's working, what's not working. Definitely one of the big things at this point, it looks like, if I can think back, was I wanted to start getting an art pass done. It had been a few days, a few hours, and I had a vague idea of what I want the art to look like. So I thought, you know what, we've got some of the gameplay done, let's try and get some of the art done. Let's do that. I'll get back to figuring out the gameplay as soon as I get this figured out. And who knows, maybe I'll have something that comes to me while I'm doing this. Maybe something will click and I'll have a new idea for how to finish this over here or fix that over there. And just maybe I could get this into a much better position. And here's what I ended up replacing the Moors with. It was a much better, kind of smaller version of the Moors, and the two of them looked really good back to back like that. It was one of the things that ended up actually being really uh, aesthetically pleasing, as well as they actually had a collision map, unlike the Moors did. And that's pretty good because what that does is it allowed me to place them on the barges, and it also allowed me to have a way for the players to get stopped at the edge of the docks without always having like a fence or something there. So it allows people to get blown off and maybe get killed via the environmental hazard, but it also allows players to have a possibility of maybe being saved without going over. It definitely added a bit more element of randomness and the ability to maybe this will happen, maybe not. It definitely is up more up in the air now. Overall, these barges are looking absolutely gorgeous, and it was at this point I think I realized it was not going to work as a gameplay thing. This was not going to work as gameplay. Um, the barges look great and all, but it just I'd figured out that they were too far away from the main point. They weren't going to be able to be used beyond being an extra area far away for the players to go. A possible third route with too much extra area on them. So instead of trying to figure out how to make them smaller and how to kind of make it look more compact, I decided, no, we're just going to leave them, but we're going to push them out. If players want to, they can try and get to them, but they're going to be too far away. You can't rocket jump, you can't do anything to them. They're just going too far away, and if they do get there, I think I'm going to add like invisible walls so it has them fall to the ocean dead. I just looks great. It's not. It looks great. It gives the story a bit of a theme. It's not what I wanted out of this. It was not working. And here at the beginning of this video, you can see there's something wrong. That big orange bit up there above the spawn head is actually a copy and paste that it went wrong. Some things like that happens every once in a while. It just means that I have to go back in the editor and I have to fix it. One of the big things about this playtest was actually I was trying to figure out if I could get over there, and if I could, what I would need to do to make sure that I couldn't get over there. Also checking some sight lines, and I believe at the end of this I actually started taking photos, because this, believe it or not, is right in the last few hours. This is actually the morning, my first day off in the weekend, Monday morning. It is about, if I remember correctly, I think it was about 10 a.m. And I was like, I need to get some photos for when I upload it. I need to get this done as much as possible. So here we are the last few hours. This is about 2 a.m., 1 a.m. to 2 a.m., the night before Monday. And I realized that I still did not have my... I did not have a floor for my ocean. I did not have a skybox correct. It was still all kind of spread out and round about. And this was all things I kind of needed to get done. I needed it to be perfect by the time that it had to go up the next day at like 10 a.m. And that 10 a.m. time period was set by me. I wanted to be up by 10 or 11 because I wanted to be able to have it up before the thing ended, and also to give myself enough time in case things went wrong, which I always feared would happen. I always feared something was going to go wrong. That something absolutely horrible would happen, and I couldn't believe it and everything. And thankfully nothing that horrible happened, but there's definitely a few things that could have went better. I will say here at the end, a bit of the landmass peeking out of the water and a bit of those like wood poles sticking out of the water, all actually inspired by Dishonored and Dishonored 2. Looking back now at this level, I realize now a lot of my inspiration for some of these design features of the level were taken directly from those games. Games that had, one. I'm very happy with the seawalls. I feel like they came out really well. They could have come out really bad, and they actually look really cool. The dock area is really well done. It came together much better than I expected, and that's kind of nice. I like having something that comes together like that so well. It's a good feeling. And this is me simply trying to get the lovely skybox to fit around a level correctly. One of the things that I did at the beginning that you may notice is I made a giant box around the entire level and then start building. You're technically not supposed to do that, but I like to be able to playtest very early on in my level's development. So instead, I end up usually making giant and kind of absolutely horrific skyboxes. And the closer I get to the finalization, the more compact I make it. Uh, the more close to what it should be I make it. That way, it doesn't like take up extra space. That's way all the like light rendering doesn't take so long. The VRADs aren't taking forever. It's a way for me to kind of get things brought down to a reasonable time period. Even simple things like putting up fences were a last minute thing for me. It was kind of like, oh, these invisible walls will not do when I finally put it on the level. I should probably put fences here. Trying some last minute defenses, replacing a trinker that I found out had not worked, making that trinker into a detail itself, kind of giving it a bit of a story. That worked out really well, actually, in my opinion. It's one of the things that you see in a lot of actual, like, Team Fortress 2 maps, is you'll find little things that tell a story. Like, I don't know, and there's one level where if you look down, there's a giant swimming pool, and you'll find different classes swimming through the pool. That's a funny one, actually. That's like one of those Easter eggs I really liked. Don't know how Valve did that. They have tools much better than us. And then here I was trying to add a window, but even later on I realized I don't like how that window looks. It looks really, really, really bad. I need to figure out another way to put that in. But at the moment, it does. Because this was the end. This was my last night. This was my last stand. It was get everything done, or it's not done in time for the end of the day. Get as much done as possible before the end, and we're set. We're gold. I really wanted to get more opinions and more people, more thoughts on it, but I realize now some of the things I forgot at the end kind of not let that be a plausibility. I forgot to. This is a major one. I forgot to put up team-specified barriers at the entrances to both bases. So if you're on the other team, you can actively walk into the base and spawn camp. And I am just like so frustrated and so sad about that. I can't believe I did that. Alright, and now to actively do a playtest that isn't just flying through. This is actually a live playtest at the speed. It was actually for me to go back and get final screenshots for the upload. Actually, interestingly enough, this is after it's been uploaded. The level's been uploaded, it's up there, I can't do anything about it. This is technically hour 73. But I wanted to get new photos. I wanted to get something better than what I had, and so I went ahead and took new photos. I'm definitely not proud of the water. The water is still something I have quite an issue with. I'm not sure if it's because it's turning that weird dark black color or what, but something about the water isn't really refreshing to me, and I want to change it. Maybe in a future version. There's some health packs there, some health. And this is about the moment when I realized I had forgot to block off the doors from the other teams. Oh, and I found that. Yeah, that was another thing I found that I didn't like. It's just a small little line. It's caused by a no-draw texture being on that wall. Originally didn't have the the blocks with the texture on were not level, so that wasn't level. So thus, it kind of ended up with there being kind of a weird gap. I've fixed it already since, but in this version that ended up being uploaded, it is still there, I believe. My goodness, some of this level is really cool looking. And I think if I ever go in and I end up finishing it, there'll be some really interesting sections for players to be able to go through and explore. I need to finish it. Sadly, I believe this version is technically stuck to time. So if you ever want to look at my 72-hour entry, you're always going to have this. But for future revisions, I don't know if you'll find it there. I don't know. I don't remember how this is going to be found now. It's me realizing that these windows are so big they have a ledge. And I can walk on it. Shooting at the point out to me, if I ever watched it later, that's something I need to work on. Now the goal is to get ready for screenshots. So it's just a few commands to kind of get your camera ready. You gotta get no clip on, and you need to be in a place where you can have cheats on. And then all you need to do is get rid of the HUD and get rid of the weapons. So there's the HUD. No, this is a weapon. And then here's the HUD. And there. Perfect for taking screenshots. Seriously. This is the screenshots that you'll see later that I ended up using for the level. I think this really came out well. I really do. I think it can come out better. I think I can do better. But, oh yeah, I found out that. But with the time I was given, 72 hours, and the amount of work I was able to put into while also still doing my full-time job, not bad. It wasn't bad. Oh yeah, I died. Oh, looking back, there's so much interesting and kind of weird things that you find. Like, I even took I didn't end up actually posting these, but I took photos of each of the barges, one for blue team, one for red team, and it came out really well. Actually, speaking of, those textures used for the barges are actually like sighted building textures. Like, that's a use for those that I never thought I'd ever have. And it looks like it fits. It looks really good on them as like barges. And you know what? Take it. It's an amazing thing. Ugh, so much. I have a lot of pride for this. I have a lot of pride for what I plan to do and what I would hope to do now that the time limit's over. But I'm so glad for what I was able to do within that short amount of time. I think if I had not been working my full-time job, I would have got more done. But because of my full-time job and my life outside of this, I did have to take that into consideration first before everything else. My. Look at this level. Look at it. It's small, it's compact, but there's so much there. Oh, I realize there's a part there of the world where it's not flush. Yeah, I realize that needs to be fixed as well. Overall, that's what I was able to create in 72 hours. This was the level that I was able to develop from just simple drawings all the way until a finished product. So here we have a few sketches. My notebook. The left is the original, the right is the second. This is kind of what the design I've had for the warehouses. And this is just some gentle written down ideas that I've had to kind of get the level to the way it is. So, with that, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is the page if you'd like to download the level and see it for yourself. Have a good day, guys.